Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Friday Morning at the Funhouse. Yes, it's morning where we are. It might be afternoon or evening, depending on where you are and when you're watching it. But here I am once again with Mr. Martin Popoff. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Yes, morning, Pete. How are you?
Doing good. I'm kind of thinking I might need an ark because we have had so much rain here in New York and so many thunderstorms in the last like 3 days. It's like, I just want to hop in a big boat and just kind of go somewhere because here I feel like I'm living in a swamp right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, we're not getting any of that one. We got a ton of rain yesterday here in Toronto, but it wasn't because of that, I don't think. But I heard you guys were going to get hit with 3 to 5 inches of rain, right?
Oof, man, it's never ending, and it's raining right now. And I think we might get a break from it tomorrow, and then Sunday they're calling for more, and then during the week. Whatever. It's funny. It's like feast or famine because a lot of times during the summer I complain because here in New York, it's never consistent. So we'll go like 3 weeks of hot weather with no rain. My grass will turn brown and then it'll week for like 2 weeks. Then it'll rain for like 2 weeks straight. And then I complain we get too much rain and then it stops and then we get nothing. So, the days of you would get like maybe 1 day a week where you get a nice little rain, keep everything green. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
So,
fun times.
But anyway, so today's topic, we have been talking about doing this. We get a lot of people asking all the time for guilty pleasure stuff. And let me just reiterate what guilty pleasure means, because some people don't like that term. So a lot of people tell me it's like, well, you shouldn't feel guilty about liking what you like. And I get all that. But this is more like, these are bands. Today's all about bands that we like that don't necessarily fit into the normal genres or styles that we listen to. And that maybe when we talk to people about music that we like, we don't necessarily throw out that we listen to this stuff. Secretly, we really like it. And that's okay, because it's cool to like stuff that doesn't fit into the norm. But most people who kind of know us would think, wow, kind of weird that Pete and Martin listen to bands like that. And that's kind of the gist of the whole thing here. So we've put together 5 and some honorable mentions. So hopefully you guys have fun with this. Again, this is fun stuff. These are bands we kind of like. I know for me, this stuff is pretty much way beyond what I normally listen to, but that's okay. It's still fun. So I'll have Martin kick us off with his number 5.
All right. So I'm kind of along that line. There's one definitely that fits exactly what you're talking about, but the other ones are sort of more in the genre that I would listen to, but they're guilty pleasures for other reasons. So we'll have a couple dimensions to this, I think. So starting off with one of those is this band right here, Jackal. Okay, so this is a band. There's Cut the Crap, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Push Comes to Shove. Got some, that one, the debut. So the reason I picked these guys is because to me, this is a band that is kind of a ridiculed band, a little inconsequential. They don't have this massive storied history that everybody talks about. They're late to the hair metal game. They're hair metal, period. Jesse plays a chainsaw, right? Cuts up a stool on stage. I saw these guys supporting Aerosmith. But they are a little bit of a band that was never really particularly critically acclaimed or even acclaimed by the fans. And yes, they come from this hair metal thing. They're obviously their shtick is we're from the South, we're from Atlanta. I think it's Atlanta, right? But they're like, okay, we're not exactly hair metal. We're like Sebastian Bach says Skid Row is hair metal, right? We're tough. We're above that sort of thing. But they really haven't escaped that tag. And I gotta say, I've picked them as a guilty pleasure, partially for all that, but partially, and this is going to be a theme through mine, because I feel guilty that I play their records so much. Right? It's this idea of
like you shouldn't, right?
Yeah, I should be listening to other stuff. I should be educating myself on other stuff. And it just feels like that old pair of shoes that you put on. It's time to go for a jog. It's time to get in the car. And this is the guilty album right here. Cut the Crap with that stupid diaper, on the world cover and the dumb title and, the porta potty on the back. I swear to God, number one, by far, this is by far my favorite Jackal album, but it's late. I think it's 1997, right? Who's thinking about Jackal in 1997, right? This thing I've played over 100, probably 200 times. This is the one that just gets me, and I play all the time. I mean, people would normally pick the debut or maybe the second one, and even the later albums are really good. But for some reason, this is truly a guilty pleasure that I go, oh no, here I go again, playing Cut the Crap, you know, for the 50th time this year or whatever, right? It's nuts, right? So there you go. And there's a bunch of reasons there, because you're supposed to be embarrassed about liking Jackal, and I'm embarrassed because I like them so much and play them so much. One last Jackal story that I want to mention. One of the funniest things I remember just from my whole interviewing life, right? I remember being on the bus with those guys, and we had an issue of Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles with a Bath from Immortal on the cover, right? In his full glory, right? And I remember one of the guitarists, I can't remember which guy it was, but really sincerely going to me, Martin, please explain this to me. What is this? What is the point of this? You know, and he was like, he was poured out about the whole thing. It's like, obviously music has moved on. I don't even understand it. This is not Jackal, what these guys are doing. And it was so funny. He's just going, Martin, explain this to me. You know, it's so funny, right? But yeah, love those guys.
This does not compute, right?
Yeah. Love them to death. Love their personalities. Love Jesse, you know, and just play that band all the time.
So a lot of people insist on calling Jackal a Southern rock band just because that's where they're from.
Yeah.
I don't really hear that in their music.
Yeah, not really. They're more, but they do have that gritty. And the other thing about the cut the crap is it's got that amazing duet with Brian Johnson on it, right? So they have a real AC/DC vibe to them as well, right? Yeah. And what a great voice, like a very Brian kind of voice out of Jesse, right? But no, I don't hear a lot of Southern rock either. I just hear a hair metal band crossed with traditional metal.
Yeah. Basically, that's kind of what I get to. Yeah, I mean, I will admit some of their stuff is fun. I've never followed their career or their music very closely, but those first two albums are fun for what they are.
Yeah, and those are the ones everybody because everybody's forgotten about them already.
I know, right? Yeah.
First two albums,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
All right, my first choice today. Yeah, again, this is one of those bands that I have, if not all of their albums on CD, I have probably like 90% of them. And it's just, you know, you hear a lot of people talk about Pablo Cruz as a band that, you know, it's like, I've gotten plenty of people over the years like, Pete, when are you going to do a show on Pablo Cruz? And I'm almost like, do I really want to go there? I like them. I don't tell many people that I like them, but I mean, you know, when you're putting out albums that have covers like that, I mean, that's pretty bad, right? This is the Listen album. But you know what? This is good music. This is good San Francisco soft rock pop. And I guess what we call it nowadays, that kind of ship that people like to ride in and drink their martinis, yacht rock. I mean, this is like, you look up yacht rock in the dictionary. Well, dictionaries don't exist anymore, but this picture would probably show up right there. You know, killer melodies. The vocals are great. The instrumentation is really tight. I mean, you're not going to mistake this for Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers, but it's very pleasing to listen to. And a lot of the elements of what I like in music are all here, but it's just kind of put on this platter that's very acceptable to the masses. And let's not kid ourselves. These guys did very well for themselves back in the day. You don't hear a lot of people talking about them anymore, but you know, this album, the self-titled debut, A Place in the Sun, is a very strong album. Worlds Away, Part of the Game, all really fun albums. I got them all. I listened to them quite a bit. You know, everybody remembers, you know, what you gonna do when she said good. I mean, it's such a great song. It's like a play out by the pool type of song. Place in the Sun is a great song. Love Will Find a Way was another big hit for them. I Go to Rio. To me, they're a fun band putting out fun music, and yeah, there's no big epic guitar solos or heavy riffing or histrionic vocals, but you know what? Who cares? And I almost picked as well, but they were kind of too much in the same vein. I almost picked Player. I like Player a lot too. And everybody just knows that one huge song from them, but their albums are actually really, really strong. I almost picked them. I'll throw them out here as kind of like an honorable, but yeah, Pablo Cruz, my first choice.
Yeah, what a great choice, because that in fact, so many of those yacht rock bands, you could almost say, you know what, for the rest of my life, I'm just going to listen to yacht rock, right? I'm just going to literally explore this genre, right? Because they're beautiful productions, great playing, great hooks. It's not hard on the ears. You know, it's
No.
pretty easy to probably find a lot of stuff across all those albums that you like, right?
Yeah.
So many of those bands, and obviously, you know, we'd be remiss to not mention the great Yacht Rock series that came out in the internet much earlier, right? I mean, that was so cool. With the, you know, with the funny acting and the Van Halen members, you know, fake Van Halen members in it and all that stuff. So yeah, that was awesome, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's always the whole Michael.
And you're right. There are so many of these bands, and you know what? I've got a lot of it.
Yeah.
I was looking around my collection, like, holy shit! I could probably do a whole show on like these yacht rock bands and all the stuff that I actually own. It's pretty scary, but and there's so much more. You know, just when you think you have a lot of something, you realize you haven't even scratched the surface. So yeah. I don't know.
All right. So okay. So for my next choice, you know, I would say this choice is a little bit along the lines of my Jackal discussion just now. Very much along the lines, and I even feel more passionate about this band. Love Hate. Love Hate is a band that it's almost like a cliche with me now. People know I'm just always boosting this band. I mean, I literally think this is one of the greatest albums of all time, start to finish. I mean, look at that great band shot on the back, right?
I bought it based on your recommendation, and it's a good album.
Yeah, and it's beautifully produced, and you know, it's just certain mysteries about it. Like I was looking at this morning, produced by John Jansen. I don't know who John Jansen is, but it's one of the great produced albums of all time. Sony, 1992. The debut is just legendary. Blackout in a Red Room. But, you know, it feels a little bit like a guilty pleasure, again, because I just play those records over and over and over all the time. They quickly kind of went, you know, still some good albums, but, you know, off the major label, they're doing this stuff like, you know, Let's Eat and Living Off Layla. This is also a barnstormer of an album, Let's Rumble. So this is their third one, right? You know, look at that no nonsense kind of, you know, song titles on the back and the whole religious writing thing, right? But again, you know, and I always say, you know, they're a little bit in that that dirty hair metal genre, along with Skid Row and Guns N' Roses, and I think they're just far and away the greatest band that ever did that kind of music. I mean, I probably even like them more than Badlands. They're definitely my favorite band out of this quote unquote genre, I suppose. But again, it's a band that is basically overlooked. No one really pays that much attention to them. I mean, most you know, proper metal fans will at least give the time of day to the debut. I mean, but even by the second album, which I think is just a drop dead 10 out of 10, it feels like most fans have already moved on. It's a little bit like the Jackal thing, because they do arrive late in the sequence, right? But again, so to add them into the guilty pleasure part of it, you know, I mean, there's stupid names like Johnny Love and Skid and Joey Gold and Jizzy Pearl and all that stuff. You know, there's so much kind of stupid about them, and those album covers are hard to get into, and the name of the band is messy with love/hate and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just feel like it's a guilty pleasure because, again, I'll just like throw it on repeatedly, obsessively, play them all the time, never get sick of them. So there you go.
Yeah, you know, I had never listened to them back when they first came out. And I remember, you know, we did a show a while back where you talked highly about that second album, and I went out and got it, and I enjoy it. And I'm thinking, wow, amazing how this really did no business. But I think if that comes out in like 87 or 88, different story perhaps, right?
Oh, yeah.
So good stuff. Good choice. All right, my next choice. This was obvious. This went onto this list. Probably the first band that I put down on here, and I don't care whether it's the late '70s, mid '70s, late '70s, '80s, '90s, 2000s. Anytime I hear the Bee Gees, I am all in. You know, I'm not a big disco guy. I don't mind disco so much. I don't go out of my way usually to listen to disco, but I will say when I think disco, I think the Bee Gees, and I think there was no band that did it better. You know, I'm also not a dancing guy. My wife loves to dance, but if we're out at a wedding or out somewhere at a party or club and there's dancing going on, I usually will shy away. But you know what? If I have one or two beers in me and the Bee Gees come on, I'm out on the dance floor. I mean, I was into the Saturday Night Fever thing when it came out. My mother had all the albums, so the Bee Gees were always played at the house growing up. Man, Jive Talking, You Should Be Dancing, Tragedy, Nights on Broadway, Staying Alive, More Than a Woman. I mean, all that stuff. Night Fever, love it all. Could never get tired of it. And let's be real. I mean, most of us have heard most of these songs a million times in our lifetimes, right? I never get sick of hearing the Beatles. I mean, the Beatles, the Bee Gees, close to the Beatles. But yeah, love it. And granted, I may not go out of my way to tell people I like the Bee Gees, but I think most people that I've met in my life have a hidden passion for the Bee Gees. I don't know too many people who I've met who say, I fucking hate the Bee Gees, right? Most people tolerate them to really like them secretly, and I'm one of them. So there you have it.
Plus, they have that great prehistory, pre-74, 75.
Well, that psychedelic pop stuff, right?
For hours and weeks, right?
Yeah, which is completely different. And I'll be honest, I haven't even dived into that stuff, and that because there's so many albums and there's so much history pre the disco era. I mean, most people talk about the Bee Gees, the two eras, and there's a lot of people who love the early psychedelic and pop stuff and hate the disco era, but just absolutely adore the early stuff. It's like completely two different bands from the little bit that I've heard. So yeah, that's a whole other thing right there.
And the other thing, even the true disco years, any music nerd can go back to that stuff and just appreciate it for the production and hearing real strings and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
the
just the
musicality.
academic exercise of like going through that stuff with headphones on, right?
Yeah, no, it's all very well produced and well played, and these guys played instruments, right? And those vocal harmonies. I mean, just like it's crazy good stuff. It's I think if we don't already look at it now, we're going to look back at a lot of the disco era from the Bee Gees as pretty much genius and one of the most important bands from that whole mid-late 70s era.
Yeah. All right. So my next choice, I'm going to go directly to what you said in the intro, and this is a band that fits that whole idea of it's surprising this guy listens to this kind of music kind of thing. And it is Madness. So this is really cool. This is actually a box set where I love when box sets do this. You could just go on Amazon or whatever and catch up on everything. This is like the first 6 or 8 albums in a row, but the guilty pleasure comes in a couple ways. Mainly though, again, back to the old theme. So this is their most recent album and one previous. These are absolute masterpieces that I play over and over and over again, and I put them on and go, I can't be listening to this again. I got to listen to something else. I got some stuff to do. I got to research on this. I'm writing a book on this, whatever. Right. And yet they're just fallbacks and go, you know what? I just listened to this album like 4 times this week. Why am I playing it again? Kind of thing. And what I love about them, well, okay, first of all, why I'm not supposed to like this stuff is I'm not a big ska guy. I mean, I love mod revival, as much of it as there is. And I even did a whole episode of History in 5 Songs on the mod revival, but I'm not a ska guy, even though I try and I buy the, expanded English beat reissues and the specials and all that whole two-tone thing. I even read a book on it. I'm just not into it at all, but Madness just escapes that whole thing. And another guilty pleasure dimension to Madness is I just think Our House is one of the most beautiful pop songs ever written by anybody. It's just so infectious and inviting when you hear that, and so ingeniously put together. And now it's in ads and stuff. It's always been in ads, but I know it's on one recent one. I can't even remember what it's about, but I hear it all the time on CNN these days. But I love the Britishness of this as well. This is very kind of Victorian and London and, back streets and a little Jack the Ripper-ish kind of thing. And one of these, I think it's this one is a concept album as well, but gorgeously produced, not particularly ska. That's the other thing about them that I love about modern day Madness. It's not as ska as the old days. But yeah, so there's one where, A, do we expect Martin to be playing Madness all the time? And B, stop playing Madness all the damn time. So there you go.
Well, I was going to comment, I haven't a clue who Madness is. And as soon as you mentioned Our House, I'm like, oh, that's them? That's like the one-hit wonders, right? Because I remember that was a huge, that's a good track, actually.
Yeah.
Our house in the middle of our street, right? That's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, wow, cool. I learned something today.
Well, again, I mean, if you want to try either the most recent album they put out or Liberty Folgate or whatever it's called. What is it called here? The Liberty of Norton Folgate or Can't Touch Us Now. You know, you'll find it's a kind of music that Pete might be able to get into because it's actually, I don't know how to describe it. It's just a really well crafted, well put together pop, I suppose,
Okay.
with an English accent and a real kind of roustabout East End London feel about it. If you're enamored with the UK and you love pop, they're for you.
So our house, what year was that? That was mid 80s, right?
Oh, that'd be about 82, 81.
Oh, was that early? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez. Man, the years are flying by. Jeez, I could have sworn that was like 85 or 86. Well, whatever. All right. Most people who know me or who have been watching this channel for a while know I'm not really big on acoustic music. All right. I much prefer an electric guitar to acoustic guitar. You know, when bands I love do acoustic albums, I generally shy away from that. I generally don't listen to bands that are mostly acoustic driven. However, there is something about the band America that I have always really, really liked. I mean, because sometimes I think a great song or great songs are great songs. And America has always written really great songs, and they're primarily acoustic in nature. You know, folk music just isn't for me. I've never really liked it. But these guys have blended folk and pop and rock into this great formula that I've always really loved. And it just, their songs are just so legendary. And again, it's kind of like the Bee Gees thing. You know, I've heard Horse with No Name, Ventura Highway, you know, Sister Golden Hair, Tin Man, Sandman, Lonely People, Muskrat Love. I've heard all these songs like a million times in my life, but they never get old for me. And I really love the vocal melodies and harmonies. And again, I'm not really into this sort of thing, but I love the way they weave the acoustic guitar passages together. The arrangements are actually very intricate and very, very clever. And I think these guys were absolutely virtuoso musicians, but doing it in kind of a different format, which, you know, more plays upon the vocal harmonies and the layers and things like that. So, you know, all I have is like a really jacked greatest hit set from them, but I listen to it a lot. I really like it. I've never like kind of gone beyond that, but it's one of those bands that I probably shouldn't like, but they really do it for me. And again, it comes down to I'm a sucker for really catchy hooks in any kind of music genre, actually. And within this kind of like folky pop kind of framework, it really works for me. So yeah, America.
That's funny. You know, I've got 3 or 4 of those on vinyl. They just sit there. I know nothing about them. They're beckoning me to play them. I know they belong in my collection, and it just feels like another band that I know I respect, and it's like a retirement project almost. Like you're like Pablo Cruz. You know, I've got 5 Pablo Cruz albums sitting over there on vinyl, right? Do I know them well? No, but when I put them on and play them, I'm totally into it, right?
Yeah, it's, you know, you like it when you listen to it. You may not go back to it that often, but secretly you really dig it. You know, you do, and you don't talk about it. It's not like it's in your regular playlist, but yeah. Totally appreciate
it. You know, and I know you're not a Spotify guy, but this is one way to get into this stuff. And I don't do enough of this either, but it's so easy to just go through certain catalogs and throw together a playlist when you know, oh, you know, I'm definitely going to like that song if I play it 5 more times. Right. And it's easy to just arrange something like that. And those playlists or finding those songs are your way to parachute into these bands. Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In some ways, that's kind of a curse, though, you know, because you start doing that, all of a sudden, you know, I'm on Amazon ordering $300 worth of CDs, and
yeah. Well, or you're like spending too much leisure time listening to music, right? I mean, you could turn yourself into such a music fan that you're going, I'm not getting any work done here. I'm just like listening to music all the time.
All the time. All the damn time.
All the damn time. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, my next choice is a very complicated one, and let's not get into trouble with this one somehow, but Stuck Mojo. Okay, Stuck Mojo. Declaration of a Headhunter, Snapping Necks, Southern Born Killers. This band could not get away with what they do anymore. This came out in the 90s and the 2000s. It's a little alt-righty, you know, it really is. There's a lot of libertarian stuff on here and really provocative. You know, I mean, they're a mixed race band, but they also get on Jesse Jackson for, like, you know, social programs is not the way to go. Everybody should, you know, pay their own way, and welfare's bad and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of really, like, edgy political stuff on here that I wonder if they're kind of obsolete and you're not allowed to do this anymore. So you play these albums and so here's the problem. I play these albums all the time because they're so good for jogging to and stuff, because they're so energetic. To describe what they are, first of all, is, well, this is the other reason they're a guilty pleasure, right? They're gorgeously put together Rich Ward Pantera-esque metal in a lot of cases, with absolutely pure, unadulterated rap vocals on top. Rap and singing, right? Those two things that people, metalheads, have hated, you know, through the whole new metal thing as well, right? So not only are they, you know, loosely in the new metal genre, but they're literally rap metal, right? And what is a more hated genre in the entire world than rap metal? It's hated more than new metal, right? But you know, and I play these guys so much and love them so much that I'm looking at these unopened copies later on, and I see my name on the front of them because I did the liner notes to the whole reissue program, right? Just like the Nevermores I did, right? Which is just so bizarre. But this is definitely a band that, for the reason that that nowadays you couldn't get away with a lot of the political things they say on these records,
right?
So there's that reason. But the other reason is, so I play them all the time. I don't know why. There's these 2 studio tracks on the end of the live album that are just like My Will and Reborn, that are just 2 of my favorite songs of all time. Plus I play the whole live album all the time too. It's bizarre. But yeah, I mean, look at them on the back of here, right? So so for all those reasons, for it being a little alt-righty, that's, you're not supposed to be listening to that anymore. And for it being rap metal, and again, back to my old theme, because I play them all the damn time, for all those reasons, it's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, I know some people who have always really been into them, and I have listened to a fair amount of Stuck Mojo over the years. Musically, I like it. I just can't get into the rap stuff. And I am just not a rap guy. It is not in my DNA at all. It's almost like when it goes into the ears, it propels it right out. And I'm like, nope, no can do. Sorry. It's definitely very controversial stuff for today. Yeah. No band would get away with that today, especially not on like a big label or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's a good
funny thing about the rapping, right? I'm not a big rap guy too, but I do have, you know, a good pile of hip hop and rap CDs. And I do give that stuff a try. And I transcribe hours and hours and hours of interviews for Hip Hop Evolution for Banger Films, right? So it's a very complicated, dense, really cool history. Like, as a story, it's totally entertaining, right? But the thing with the rap thing is, like, so few bands do it, and it is over some of the greatest Pantera music you've ever heard in your life, like with Stuck Mojo, right? Because Rich is just a genius, right? I love it on here. So it's like it, because it's fresh and so rare, right? But yeah, I'm not a big rap guy, and I don't listen to tons and tons of rap. I'm a weird hip hop fan. It's like the 10 records I love by hip hop guys, I actually play them a lot. But I'm not inclined to go play, you know, go learn stuff over and over and over again.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, my next choice here, going back to the early 80s, you know, at a time where I was listening to basically nothing but, like, you know, hard rock and metal. So I'm like, you know, teenager, and, you know, early 80s, Judas Priest, Maiden, Sabbath, Purple, Scorpions, Rainbow, Metallica's right around the corner, Slayer, all that kind of stuff. And I remember, like, talking to people, again, we're in high school, right? Who are not hard rock and metal fans. And what were they listening to? They're listening to more mainstream stuff and pop stuff. And one of the big bands of the time, one of the newer bands of the time, was this all-female group called the Go-Go's. And I remember, because when you're a kid, you've told many stories here about you and your buddies up, who, if it wasn't heavy, no good, you rated them on heaviness and all that kind of stuff. And for me, if it wasn't heavy, no good, I have no use for it, whatnot. But lo and behold, an all-female band, intriguing, because I'm a teenager, right? And thinking about girls, you love your music. I found Belinda Carlisle absolutely adorable. And, you listen to songs like, We Got the Beat, Head Over Heels, Get Up and Go, Vacation, all this kind of stuff. And then MTV comes out, and MTV shows the Go-Go's all the time, prancing around, California, swimming in the pools, all this kind of stuff. And I'm kind of like, I think I don't mind this. I should hate it, but I think I don't mind this. And when you really kind of peel back the layers of the Go-Go's music, it's just fun, kind of like, it's almost like the hippie generation, the lovey-dovey music from the 60s brought into the early 80s, mixed with a little new wave and a little bit of punk attitude and certainly rock and roll. And you know what? Really good band. I don't normally like all-female bands either. That's usually not my thing. I got nothing against that. It's just not something I normally gravitate to. But and then Belinda went solo, and I really liked her solo career too. So maybe I just have a thing with Belinda Carlisle. I don't know, but I like the music of the Go-Go's. I think it's fun. I mean, Beauty and the Beat and Vacation are really strong albums, and I can listen to those any day and say, brings me back in time and to a day where I wasn't very open about a lot of different music, but that stuff, that band, I can totally appreciate.
Interesting. As you're saying this, I'm thinking along those lines, what do I have that are like those? And to me, one would be, I got on the Billy Idol train. A more guilty pleasure one is I got on the Howard Jones train for that big Howard Jones album, right?
Yeah.
And along the female line, I got on the Tracy Chapman train for that big record, the Suzanne Vega train. And there was one other one I just forgot. Sade, even.
Sade is terrific.
That big album. Terrence Trent D'Arby. So we can be roped into these things by them being the it band or the it person at that time, and getting caught up in the excitement of their shot into superstardom, right? And then you're hearing it, and because you're forced to hear it, or it's on the radio or whatever, or you're seeing the videos back in the video age. And you slowly warm to it, and then you check the whole album out, and then there's deep tracks and all that stuff. And of course, they're well recorded, and there's good lyrics and all that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's if we thought about it, I'm sure there's a bunch of Go-Go's. I mean, I even put the Cars into that sometimes. Sometimes to me, they feel like
exactly.
Yeah.
Another one I didn't even think of. You know what? I'm going to save it for my last pick, because my last pick, I actually did a whole show on this band like 2 weeks ago, and I'm almost like I don't want to talk about them again. So I am actually, because I just thought of another one, and I'm going to change it for my last pick. So go ahead.
All right. So I talking with Pete before we started recording, I kind of panicked about this and thought, you know what? If we're not going to do a part 2, I definitely got to talk about this band right now. So my last pick, it's a complicated one, and I'll explain. Kiss.
There you go.
There we go. There we've got a fully signed Carnival of Souls there. Sonic Boom, recent, some older stuff. So this is a funny one, because you almost feel that with Kiss, you're supposed to outgrow them at some point, right? 100%. That's the big deal, right? And I couldn't believe like we're, it just felt like a surreal moment when we were on the other night, and Mike Portnoy, the greatest drummer of all time, is sitting there debating the godliness of Kiss Rock and Roll Over, right? And like you're thinking almost like, are we in an alternate universe? Like we're not supposed to think this stuff is great anymore, especially someone like Mike, who's like the wise music swami of the world and the greatest drummer in the world, right?
Yep.
So it's so bizarre, and yet so A, we're supposed to outgrow it, and then B, we're not supposed to really think Creatures in the Night or Lick It Up or Animalize is really any competition for the proper cutting edge stuff coming out at the time. Nor are we supposed to think Revenge is particularly good in 1982, but I love Revenge. Nor are we supposed to think their grunge album Carnival of Souls is like legit in any way whatsoever, but I love Carnival of Souls. Nor are we supposed to think, you know, when they kind of just go back and do the safe thing with Sonic Boom and Monster, we're not supposed to like that either, right? And a lot of Kiss fans, believe me, love one of those and hate the other, and they fight like cats and dogs over this stuff, right? And I remember going on a Kiss podcast years ago and getting a lot of heck for saying Aerosmith's music was way more sophisticated than Kiss's, right? I mean, I thought that was an obvious, and I just got like jumped down the throat about that, right? But it just seems really weird that they feel like a guilty pleasure because A, I haven't outgrown it, and B, I'm totally going along. Asylum is like my favorite album of theirs from the 80s kind of thing, right? It's like I'm going along with all this stuff they do. The only time I cry foul on Kiss is Hot in the Shade and whatever that other one is called, Crazy Nights, right? It's only right there that I'm like saying this is trash compared to everybody else doing this kind of music. But I'm like fine with Lick It Up. I'm fine with the pop stuff. I'm fine with I Was Made for Loving You. I'm fine with Revenge, and the grunge and the later stuff. So it's like it just feels like all along the way they're like just almost like provocatively telling us that this is childish music, but we still love it. So there you go. That's why I kind of feel Kiss is still.
Well, I mean, it's really perfect, right? And you know, we've talked privately about how Kiss is a perfect part of this whole conversation. We were expected by non-Kiss fans to grow out of that, right? It's almost like to the people who didn't get it back in the day, Kiss was a fad. Kiss was a gimmick. You would be, you know, everybody who was into it would be into it for a couple of years and then move on to real music and never to go back. And I think, like, I look back on my history with Kiss. I was a huge Kiss fan, Kiss Army back, you know, in the mid 70s. You know, shortly after Dynasty, I kind of moved on to other things. I still followed Kiss. I still bought the records. Didn't quite love the band as much as I did. But then all of a sudden, you know, Creatures comes out and Lick It Up comes out and Animalize. All of a sudden, you know, I kind of forgave them for Dynasty and Music from the Elder. I was like, you know what? This, even though I've moved on to bands like Metallica and Slayer and Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and, you know, all the other bands, it was still okay to be a Kiss fan. But for a lot of people, that's taboo. You never go back, right? Because they didn't get it from the get-go. Yeah. So they, you know, it's weird. I mean, I have a bunch of Kiss shirts. I wear them out. You know, people look at me like, here's this old dude wearing a Kiss shirt. What's wrong with him? There's nothing wrong with me, right? There's still nothing wrong with all those classic albums.
You know, the perfect example crystallized down to one song about this whole discussion is the song Lick It Up. Because right at that point, you've got Randy Rhoads, you've got Fast and Technical Priest, you've got Scorpions at their peak, 3 or 4 Maiden albums out. There's all this amazing stuff going on. Metallica's coming on the scene. And that song is so stupid and simple, but it's like, I love this as much as all that other stuff. What is wrong with me? Like, talk about guilty pleasure, right? You know, it's just the most beeline, straightforward song you could possibly imagine. And it's almost like, you know, it's the genius of that simplicity thing.
Yeah.
But in that case, it's almost like you're forced into the debate about how simple this song is against all its competition at the time, and how dare they do that? But look how brave they were to do that.
Yeah, big time. I mean, that was a big deal, right? That was an enormous deal. It's like you almost wonder if that album really, really sucked, and it doesn't. Would it still have sold well anyway? Just because here we are, makeup's gone. Take us or leave us, right? Yeah. But the album didn't suck. The album was good.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Well, okay. One last thing to say about Kiss that again, why they should be guilty pleasures. The productions were terrible and the drumming was terrible. Like, the drumming and I don't blame Eric Carr for that, right? I blame the band and the umbrella idea of the concept, and it's planned that way. But there were just certain things that also made signals that went up that made you think that you're supposed to really not like this, because the production was so cardboardy and mid-rangey, and the drums were so cloistered and held back in everything they were supposed to do on there, that again, you as a completely expert metal fan or whatever at that point, because the new wave British heavy metal and everything, you're not supposed to like this kind of production and this kind of corporate American drumming and everything about what was going on. And yet guilty pleasure,
you'll like it anyway. Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. When you really start dissecting some of the, especially those 80s albums, they're fairly safe for what they are. I mean, look, no like long guitar solos, no like adventurous arrangements, anything like that. Very kind of boxy. But again, it's Kiss, so it was okay.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I remember specifically at the time, everything else I was listening to was nothing like Kiss, but I still kept listening to Kiss. Yeah. I don't know. Well, we can do a whole show on this topic. So my number one choice here was going to be ABBA, but I decided in the middle of our conversation before I found a different choice, because I just did a whole show with Lynn on ABBA like 2 weeks ago, and I think I've talked enough about ABBA right now. They are a guilty pleasure. I love ABBA. Great songs, great band. Who doesn't love ABBA? But I decided now to kind of switch gears and go with a really odd choice, because again, and again, this is less of a band, so this is kind of completely different, but I just said, screw it. I don't dislike and actually like a lot of Madonna's early catalog. And again, it's another weird thing, kind of like the Go-Go's. I mean, in the early 80s, I was listening to completely other stuff. I went away to college, and Madonna was first starting to break pretty big at that time. And I remember like a month into school, I started dating this girl. We wound up being together the entire time I was at school and a year afterwards. And she was an enormous Madonna fan from Long Island. And she used to play those first two albums like crazy. And I remember, I would walk into her dorm room and all I'd be hearing is Borderline and all that kind of stuff. And at first I was like, oh my God, come on. I got this new Metallica album. Wouldn't you rather hear this? And she's like, no. But little by little, I started to really notice how great these songs were, and really crafty production. And then, of course, Like a Virgin came out, and then all those couple albums after that, and she's all over MTV nonstop. And I'm like, I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm not going to tell anybody, but I really like this stuff. It's nothing that I would normally listen to. But man, these hooks are undeniable. These songs are so catchy. And Madonna always did this weird mix of styles too. And I just, throughout like the rest of the 80s and even into the 90s, when Madonna came out with a new album, I generally either bought it or listened to it quite a bit. And even to this day, I hear Madonna, I don't turn it off. And I'm like, I kind of secretly am like, yeah, I kind of every now and then like to listen to an hour's worth of Madonna. Sue me. Right. So I figure, why not throw that out there? Because for me, Madonna, and I don't tell many people that I like Madonna, because I think most rockers or metalheads, Madonna is pretty much trash, but I don't mind her at all.
Yeah, that's one I've never really played much of at all. But again, along the same tack, when we talked about Pablo Cruz, it's you could put headphones on to all these big 80s albums like a Duran Duran or a Tears for Fears. I mean, that's another band that people think are absolute prog legends in a certain way, right? Like proggy, right? Not the same way we normally think about that, but just like the complication of the arrangements and the layers that are put into that stuff, even though it's moving along at a dance beat or a 4/4 beat or whatever, right? But so many of those bands, there's just from a music nerd point of view, and you could put Madonna in there, of course, as well. You could get a lot of entertainment about listening for sounds, right? Yeah.
I was just a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what channel we were watching. Couldn't have been MTV because there's no freaking videos on MTV. But I don't know what it was. The Like a Prayer video came on, and I was riveted because I remember I used to watch that all the time. There was one of those videos that was on MTV, heavy rotation. No matter when you turn MTV on, Like a Prayer came on, and sat here watching. I'm like, wow. And I was like, I remember back in the day when this was new and all over the place. And I still really like the song a lot. And I love the video and she looks amazing in it. And I was like, all right, there you go. Some things never change.
Yeah, cool, cool.
Honorable mention time. What do you got?
Wow. Well, I got a few, so I'm not going to babble on like crazy about them. I only had this one out because it was going to be part of my thing. But you know what? I'm going to leave that one because this might be a good one for our guilty album pleasure ones. I'm going to leave that off. Poison, I've talked about many times. I love later Poison. I was never a Poison fan at the time, but I became a fan later. That's one. Soul Asylum is an interesting case because they are critically acclaimed and critic darlings. And it was cool to be a Soul Asylum band across the first 4 or 5 albums. It's only when the 2 Green albums came out, Grave Dancers Union, whatever the other one's called, that they really got kind of like poppy and syrupy and sappy, and you know, Dave, what's his name, became Dave Perner became the kind of it boy, right? And Winona Ryder and all that sort of thing. And when they became big with I can't remember the name of the hit, but those 2 Green albums is where they decided, okay, we're only going to give you the melodic, emotional, sappy emo stuff from the old days, and not the punk and not the heaviness and the hardcore and the complication and the really cool things. So that's a band that you know, if you were still into them, you know, when the Green albums happened, it was now a guilty pleasure. One other funny one is System of a Down, which is, you know, I still play those records regularly because they are so extreme and weird and goofy and funny, and just really shocking. You know, in terms of who would dare come up with this kind of music sort of thing, but definitely a love it or hate it band, and mostly a hated band by everybody, just because it's so bizarre, right? So that's a guilty pleasure I still play once in a while and go, what am I doing? I must be the only person on the planet listening to this record right now, right? This is crazy, and it's a little embarrassing. So there you go.
Yeah, I really dug the System of a Down albums when they first kind of broke big. But I think like a lot of the that new metal stuff that came out in that era, I listened to a lot of it at the time. I just don't even go near any of it anymore. And I play it and it's like, it almost like irritates me. But you'd be surprised. There are a lot of people that still like System of a Down. And again, they were really different. And I think their music is very challenging. And just because it hasn't aged well for me, and I totally see the appeal. And it is kind of extreme and out there, right? I mean, those guys were like from a different planet, I think.
Another quick one, just to mention the new metal thing. You know, I interviewed them and I knew them a little bit at the time, and I was a little bit on the Disturbed train at the very beginning, right? And then I just paid no attention to them ever again for a lot of years. But recently I played some of their recent albums. That is the catchiest, heavy stuff.
Yeah.
It's like literally like an intravenous into your veins of this sugary metal. These amazing, quite heavy metal hooks. That they're really interesting band, and they sell a lot of records and people love them, and I can totally understand why. But talk about a guilty pleasure. You're not supposed to like Disturbed. It's a little bit like a Nickelback, right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Yeah, I don't mind those first couple Disturbed albums. I think they're probably, I don't listen to them much anymore, but I think I still have them. And, you know, that for me, that was kind of the cream of the crop from that era, I think. And that guy's a great singer, great riffs in those tunes. And yeah, catchy as all hell. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have a couple of artists here that I kind of put down that, you know, probably a little weird for me. I don't really dive into this whole kind of like crossover country thing much. My wife is into it. And so I, you know, of course, I've heard a lot of these bands and artists, but I will say I have a lot of respect for a guy like Brad Paisley. First of all, he's an absolute serious guitar player, and he injects a lot of guitar into his music, which I really like. And his music is really fun to listen to. I feel the same about the Zac Brown band. Both of those, I think out of all the bands and artists that my wife listens to, I can probably deal with those two fairly easily. Back to the kind of folky thing, Dan Fogelberg. really good artist with some really great songs. Again, a guy that kind of like America mixed, pop and folk music very, very successfully, and another really serious musician that if you really kind of peel back the layers and listen to those albums and kind of get past the hits, amazing guitar player and really good singer. And last but not least, probably one of my, I didn't want to just talk about him in the main set here, but I have to mention him because, man, I grew up with my mom absolutely adoring Barry Manilow, and I still get jacked listening to any Barry Manilow song or hit from that era. Looks like we made it. Yes, indeed. Mandy, you write the songs, I write the songs that make the whole world sing. I don't know what it is. It's probably a nostalgia thing, but when I think of and when I hear Barry Manilow, it takes me back to being like a kid in the 70s, mom cleaning the house and cooking with Barry Manilow blasting on the record player. And it just, I get like the warm and fuzzies type of thing. So there you go.
Cool. Nice. And I'll raise you a Mandy with a Brandy, you're a fine girl too. There's
well, that's like my number one favorite pop song of all time, man. That's the greatest. I absolutely love that song. I am not afraid to tell the world my love for Brandy. I absolutely love that song. Yeah. So there you have it, guys. All sorts of choices of stuff that Pete and Martin are, maybe you wouldn't think we listen to or like, but we actually do. So in the comments below, please list your guilty pleasures, stuff that maybe doesn't fall in line with the rest of the things you listen to, or maybe like Martin said on a couple of his choices, bands that most of the world think are really bizarre and like, maybe don't have great reputations, but we still think are pretty cool anyway. So put them down in the comments below. Martin, you want to plug in anything on the book side coming out or out?
Not so much. I finished writing my damned book and turned that in, so that was good. And I've still got the Heap and the Lizzie and all that, and but nothing much new coming out. The Nazareth will be the big Nazareth hardcover, coffee table book will be wending its way over here probably in about 6 weeks or 2 months. Cool. So that one's coming. The S one's done. I haven't seen it yet, but it's out. People are liking it. So yeah, martinpopoff.com for all that.
Cool. Sounds good. I'm actually just finishing up your last Rush book, and then I'm going to dive head first into the Heap book. So everybody here watching, you hopefully will get a review from me either on next Wednesday or the Wednesday after during the normal What's Hot days. So be on the lookout for that. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Coming up next Friday, Martin and I are going to go back into the albums that most people seem to hate, but we really like, part 2. So stay tuned for that next Friday, and have a good weekend, everybody. Got all sorts of stuff coming up this weekend. Plenty of ranking the album shows are happening here on the channel. Black Metal Legends Immortal, Herbie Hancock. What else am I missing? I don't know. There's probably 1 or 2 more. So stay tuned for all that and more. And then coming up on Monday, we've got the return of the Hudson Valley Squares after a holiday week. Tuesday in the Prague seat, and Monsters, then all sorts of stuff next week. So stay tuned for that. And for Martin Popoff, I'm Pete Pardo. Have a good weekend, everybody. Take care.